If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
We had a number of questions come in this week on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, email, all of that stuff, twvgshow@gmail.com. And one is about Jerusalem artichokes. Now, some people are familiar with these, other people are not. This is a root crop that's a perennial that will come back year after year. And it does have some...
So it has this
benefit.
It's like a probiotic or prebiotic, I think, actually, component to it. It's like something that just exists in the plant. It's called inulin, not insulin, inulin. Okay. And what it does is it can have it can cause gas to occur diarrhea,
in the body.
Like that. Kind of a laxative effect almost. Not necessarily diarrhea, but a lot of times gas. And so they had asked, like, how would you deal with that? Mm-hmm. Especially if you're sensitive to that. Well, just like anything that your body might have a reaction to, you don't want to, like, just start consuming a ton of it. Right. It has happened for us, and what you do is you just kind of start small and let your body build up a tolerance.
Now, Jerusalem artichokes, it's a substitute for potatoes and check with your doctor, but it is
It's lower in starch and carbs.
And it's better for those who are diabetic.
Anybody.
Okay.
At this point.
Another question came in was, when do you pick your pumpkins and how's the best way to store them? So the answer to that is, when we grow pumpkins, we pick them when they're about 90% ripe. Now, this is an orange pumpkin. There are other different colors of pumpkins. We're talking about the general jack-o'-lantern orange pumpkin. About 90% ripe, and if that, with the blue and the gray ones, you can kind of gauge on that as well. Now, you want to pick them before you get a freeze. Or the day before a frost, because this can affect the fruit or the actual pumpkin itself. If it freezes, you're not going to have any salvageable because it's going to freeze thaw and it's going to turn to mush. If you get a light frost, you're okay. The best place to store them is out of direct sunlight, and obviously we don't have the perfect root cellar scenario, but about 50 degrees, about 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and up 50 to 75% humidity. Okay, so a typical basement, I would say, is where we have stored ours, and we've been able to store them from November to about March, April, realistically. That's how far and how long we've been able to store them. Now, we pressure can ours, pumpkins that are not jack-o'-lantern, that actually are designed for edible. Jack-o'-lantern pumpkins, the ones we buy at the store to carve, are actually bred and specifically designed for decoratorial purposes. They're not, they can be consumed, yes, but they are not very good. They're very stringy, and they just don't have any flavor. So your Cinderella pumpkins, that type of thing, your Jardel pumpkins, those are the edible, the thick wall pumpkins are what you can consume and eat. So we pressure can our pumpkins, and talk about the procedure in which you go about pressure canning. You cannot water bath.
No, so that to be pressure can because they are low acid food, so they're not very high in acid. You need to peel them, then you need to chop them into about 1-inch cubes, and then you pressure can them in some water, maybe a little bit of salt. Salt's not necessary. And the reason being is that if you were to mash them, that's too viscous, the liquid is too thick. So you do have to peel them, and then you have to cube them.
So that's why you have to pressure can the pumpkin. Ashley writes in and says, first-time gardener. I have been watching many of your videos on other gardening sites. Your videos are definitely the best. Straight to the point and how to fix it. Appreciate it very much. You taking time and helping people like me. Well, you're certainly very welcome, Ashley. We make the mistakes so you don't have to, and we still make mistakes. So it's not like we've learned and we're good to go. We always want to show the potential problems and the problems that do happen over and over again in the garden, whether you're prepared for them or they unexpectedly come up. Kathy writes in and asked, why don't you try the Back to Eden garden method? Since I've switched to that, I've had way better growth, but more importantly, I have had no weeds. I have wood chips about 4 inches deep. Well, that is a good question, and I don't have an absolutely perfect answer for you, or we don't have a perfect answer for you. the back to Eden method, for those who are unfamiliar with that particular gardening method, it's when you bring wood chips in, preferably from undiseased trees, because that can have ill effects on certain species of vegetables and fruits in which you're growing in your garden. And you mound them up across the garden bed 5, 6, 8 inches. Over a course of time, those wood chips begin to break down and feed the soil and actually act as a mulch. So what you're not planting in the wood chips themselves, you're moving the wood chips back. For example, if you have a tomato start, you're moving the wood chips back, and then you're digging the hole into the soil, and then you plant your tomato, and then you fill it back in, and then you move the wood chips back around the base of the plant. Many people think that you're planting in the wood chips themselves, and that is not the case, because the wood chips are just the mulch that is breaking down to feed the soil. Now, some Back to Eden gardeners are very successful with this. They've put a foot of mulch down and let set for 4 or 5 years, and then that foot of mulch, that foot of wood chips, is now 3 or 4 inches of wood chips and 6 to 8 inches of very thick, black, perfect compost. So it is a method in which does work very well if the technique is practiced correctly. Just not something that we have done. Raised bed gardens work very well. Containers work very well. It's a unique method in whichever works best for you. And we're looking at different techniques in which to increase the yield and growth of our vegetable garden. It's just something that, one, you have to figure out what works good for your schedule, your finances, and what you hope your end result will be, which for many of us is a overwhelming amount of produce. So Back to Eden garden method is something that we will definitely look into in future garden projects. Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full-length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.